Hey, I'm Eric Scott, and I'm back. It's been quite a while since I've made a video, and over almost 2 years now, I've been making daily collages, and I haven't really done any long form videos of making a collage. So I wanted to go ahead and fix that and do a longer form video for you. I've done a few little time lapse videos, but nothing really where I kind of explain my process or my thoughts behind what I'm doing. So I want to do that for you right now. So let's go ahead and we'll switch it over and we'll get started. All right, before I dive in, just a real quick note about materials. So first of all, I have my substrate. This is a piece of Strathmore 400 series mixed media paper. I like it because it's nice and stiff. And even if I were going to do white, I like the thicker kind of board for, or this thicker paper for kind of gluing everything down. Then I have my colored paper. So I use a cardstock from Michaels. It's the Recollections cardstock, and I'm going to do grays and black grays and reds today. I've kind of picked those out already. I'm going to use probably the full, well, not the full sheets, but I'm going to use enough of the black gray to kind of cover the whole paper, and then the red's going to be smaller, so I'm just going to kind of use scraps. I have a glue stick, my Uhu glue stick, which I love. I only use Uhu. A pair of scissors. I do have an X-Acto knife, a craft knife if I need it, a pencil if I need it, and then over here, yeah, this is a catalog. This is just a, I use it as glue paper. I used to use an old sketchbook, but I always get this the Uline catalogs, and just makes for a great gluing surface. And then I have a cutting board because I am going to need to trim stuff at least, and I don't know if I'll use the knife for actually cutting stuff out of the paper, but I might. So anyway, the first thing I need to do, and the first thing I always do, is I need to cut this paper, the black and grays, to fit this. So let me go ahead and arrange this, get this out of the way. So what I like to do is I like to cut all of them at one time. So I want to cut this 6 by 8. So my substrate is 6 by 8-inch paper, and I'm going to take this and just get it all even. All right, and I don't like to measure, so I'll take my paper and I'll put it down. And what I like to do is I like to have a little extra. It might be hard to see, but there's a little bit of the gray sticking out on this side. And down here, it doesn't really matter right now, but I want to have a little bit of the gray sticking out so that the papers that I cut are a little bit bigger than my substrate and it's easier to fit them on. I didn't forget to mention that I do use a ruler, and this is usually the only time I use a ruler. And I'm going to cut a straight line. So I just put my knife right up against the edge of the paper, slide the ruler over, and then this is cardstock, so it will take several passes to go all the way through. And I just cut down, and that quickly I have my paper cut to the same width, or the right width, and then I do the same thing, and I'm going to cut a little strip off the top. Again, over here on this side, I want just a little bit of the paper showing, again, so that I can have a papers that are slightly bigger than the substrate. So just like I did before, use the knife, put it at the edge of the paper, and then I can cut these little strips off. So that's how I can cut my paper so that I don't have to worry about measuring. All right, let's get that out of the way. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to think about kind of the order, because the reason I cut these 3 papers the same size is that I'm going to layer them on this, and I don't want to have to deal with a lot of extra paper. So actually I'm going to do this, I'm going to start with black, and I'm going to cover the whole thing black. And you might say, well, why don't I just do the black? Why do I have the substrate? And again, it's really because that substrate gives it a lot of stiffness, a lot of thickness. So anyway, I've got my catalog over here, so I can just flip my paper over. Actually, I think this side would be better for the glue. And just take my glue stick, and I can go ahead and spread the glue. I always like using the blue Uhu glue stick. It does dry totally clear, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I'm just going to spread the glue all over. And I have to work pretty quickly with this because if the glue starts to dry and I go to put it down, sometimes I get it crooked. And if the glue is starting to dry pretty well, it can be hard to slide it around. But if I can really put on a lot of glue, and notice that I'm covering the whole surface. All right. And then once I have it all covered, I can pick it up and then lay it down. So I always kind of start in one corner and see how it slides around. And then before it can stick, see how I slid it so there was a little bit of white showing. And I just kind of touch it down and I'll flip it over. And then I can really line it up on the back. And if that glue hasn't started to dry, it'll just slide around. And then I just rub it. I do have glue on my hands. And I always end up with a ton of glue on my fingers. But anyway, so I'm just going to rub it, and that's going to get that nice and glued down. Okay, so I'm going to kind of work from dark to light and create layers. So this is the base layer. A lot of this is going to get covered up, and I like having all the surface covered, so that way when I glue the next paper on, it glues down flat. If I were to cut this and have like ridges, then that would show up through this paper because it's not super thick. Now before I do anything, I'm going to actually turn my page of my catalog, because that page has glue on it, so that way when I go to glue some more, I won't get glue everywhere. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm just going to cut lines and cut some shapes out, and I could draw it first, but I really like kind of the spontaneity of cutting and just trying to be spontaneous and intuitive. And so the reason that I have the gray the same size is that I can really think about positive and negative shapes. So I like this as the positive shape, and so in order to have the negative shape, I need to cut a shape out of here. So I think if I just start, and I move over a little bit, and then I can cut this out. So I could cut this like with an X-Acto knife, with a craft knife, but there's something about cutting with scissors that I just absolutely love. So now, this piece is a scrap, but then I have positive, negative, positive, so that black is showing through. And then, I'm going to keep doing that. Maybe I'll come over here. And cut a slightly different shape out. Okay. So again, that's the positive shape, and then I have to cut out the negative shape. And I don't worry so much about trying to be perfect, but if you really are, you can kind of think about drawing shapes first. But if you draw with pencil, then you either have to erase your marks or flip it over. So anyway, so now I have two. The thing is, I think that's a little too skinny right in there, so let me go ahead and just trim some of this off. So I make these judgments as I work, and I can kind of decide like, oh, that's not working, or that's too skinny. And then, notice I haven't glued anything down yet. So, all right, so there's that. I do want to have maybe something cut out at the top. So I have, this black line's touching this side and the bottom. This one over here is touching this side. So I might want to have something up here to touch the top. That's going to kind of help compositionally. So maybe I'll just cut a little shape out up here. And again, now I have to cut out the negative shape. Okay. And then that will go in like that. Okay. So anyway, that gives me a basic. I can kind of look at it, and there's the black up here. There's a lot going on. There's not so much going on down here, so I think I want to have maybe a little something happening down here before I glue it all down. It's one of the things I like about collaging is that it allows you to kind of play around with things and try things out before you commit to it. All right. So, anyway, I think maybe this needs to have a little bit more taken off of it. Make it a little bit wider. All right. So now that I have that all cut, I can start to glue it down. And I always like to start with things that are on the corners. So I can even start with this one because it's on the corner down here. And so what I want to do is just flip it over. And this is where I get mixed up sometimes because sometimes I forget to flip it over and I put glue on the wrong side. So hopefully I can kind of remember. Sometimes talking and doing these things all together can be a little bit cumbersome and kind of lose track of what I'm doing. All right, so I did put a lot of glue on there, just like I've done before, and then I'm going to start right in the corner and then lay it down, and just make sure that up here lines up with the edge. So I can slide things around because I have a lot of glue. And then I can rub it down. Alright, let's do this one next. So again, I can just flip it straight over. I do want to be careful. I don't want to stick it in the glue. I mean, I do like this blue glue, but on these catalog pages, sometimes it's hard to see exactly where the wet glue is. Lay that down. Rub that down. Okay. We'll do this one next. Again, this gets flipped over. I'm going to kind of go out of the camera frame, but that's all right. And the great thing about the catalog is that I can use it over and over again. Sometimes the pages stick together, not a big deal, but this catalog probably has a couple hundred pages in it. So it means I can use it and get a lot of use out of it. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and turn it. And then now I'm going to glue this one down. Again, this dark blue glue, it dries totally clear. So, but it's really good because I can see how much I'm putting down. There's just a lot of glue on there, so it slides around pretty well. And then glue it down, and then I have this piece to glue down. Okay. So I'm going to layer on top of this. So I have to kind of decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to have something totally different where I don't have to worry about what's down, or do I want to have something layered inside of these shapes? So I'm not going to worry about that because that just adds a layer of complication to it. So I'm going to kind of ignore this, and I'm going to use the light gray now, and I'm going to cut some other kind of shapes out of it. So this, I'm not so certain where everything's going to end up. So this will take probably a little bit of experimenting and things, but I'm going to go ahead and cut using some similar lines and shapes. So when I go down, when I set this down, it does cover up some of this, but does it cover up too much? So maybe if I feel like it's covering up too much, I can cut this off. Now it's not cutting off as much. But what I might think about is, do I want to cut something over here so that we see this part? So I can cut a little curve out of this side. So I probably won't use as much of this light gray as I did the dark gray, and that way it will show through, show the black and the dark gray will show through more. Okay. So anyway, there's that. All right, so with this, I think what I want to do is have. See, this is where I'm like, you start to debate, like, okay, how should this go? Maybe I'll cut something out this side. So again, I'm just trying to I'm trying to fill the space in an interesting way. I'm trying to kind of work more intuitively. Alright, so does this go this way now? And here's the thing, like as I cut this out, I might decide like, oh, that's not working. So maybe I'll have to like change things. Now I totally covered this part up here. So, you know, is that something I want to do? Do I want to go ahead and cut something out up here? You know, so now this is showing, that's showing, this is showing. You know, I think this is a little weird that it's like it. I wish I would have cut it a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, so I can't make it bigger, but I can make it smaller. And then, you know, maybe I want to cut a shape out like I did on the other side. And the nice thing is I can move this anywhere if I'm going to leave this open. But then I can also, what's interesting is if I cut, you know, I can use this and cut a smaller strip out like that. Okay. Maybe I can do the same thing over here. And then that can come in like that. You know, and the thing is I can go ahead and I can slide things around, I can move things around. All right, that's kind of interesting. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start gluing this down. I have a lot of glue, so let's turn that. And then we'll just glue this down and we'll see how it's going. So this piece I left it kind of stick out the edge a little bit. So I think I'm going to glue this part down last because I want to play around over here. Make sure I have enough room for all those other pieces. And then, you know, kind of decide exactly where do I want this piece, maybe somewhere like that. And then when this piece gets glued on, I can slide it over, have some stick off the edge, and I can trim that. I think that's what I'll do. Alright, so I have kind of the basics down now. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and trim off this extra, and when I flip it over, I actually have, maybe you can see, there's, some of that black is showing. So I remember when I cut the paper originally, I cut it bigger than I needed to. So now I can go ahead and come in and trim off that extra paper. The other side's look pretty good. All right, so now I have that done, and I want to go ahead and do some circles. I love doing circles. I'm going to do them out of the red, and what I'm thinking of is to have a bigger dark red and inside a smaller bright red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start with the lighter red. And I get asked all the time, like, how do I cut my circles? Do I use punches? Do I use, templates to draw them? And I just usually cut a square or a small rectangle, and then I just trim. I just cut them. So all of my circles are cut usually by scissors. Every once in a while, I'll use the craft knife, and I just cut it. Originally I was hoping this circle would be a little bit bigger, but because I cut it kind of wonky. And that's a pretty decent circle. And then what I want to do, since I want to have a bigger dark red, I'll glue this down. So I'll spread some glue on the back. And then, I don't know how big I want that dark red circle, so I'll glue it down with quite a bit around it. And then I'll just do the same thing. I'll cut a square out. And then when I look, this side is the smallest. And so I'll start there, and I'll just try to trim it and make it an even circle all the way around. And so I turn the paper that I'm cutting. My scissors don't really move other than, squeezing them. And then I just go back and I trim off, and I just make it as even as I can. And what I find really interesting is that I notice how wonky they are, but I think when people see it, I think this is like this with all art, is that when we make a piece, we know it so intimately, and we kind of see all the glaring, what we consider mistakes or things that just aren't perfect. And when other people see it, they don't see that at all. Okay, so I don't know where this is going to go. I think I want to have at least 2 more, and I think I want to have a slightly bigger one. So I'll start with the light red again, and do the same thing. But this time I will try to be more purposeful and really try to cut a bigger circle. So when I cut a circle, it usually is pretty wonky at first, and then I just have to go back around and trim it up. That one came out pretty good. Okay, and just like before, I'm going to glue it down. So that one's really wonky, so I really need to even it up. And I like the wonkiness. I often say embrace the wonky because, again, I'm a human being, so I'm not going to be able to cut it perfectly. Even though, again, whenever you look at it, it might seem like, oh, that's such a good circle. Um, and I'm not a big fan of, like the machines that, like the Cricut and stuff, that can do this type of thing and cut a perfect circle. I'm not a big fan of the punches because, well, first of all, with the punches, they only come in certain sizes, and so I'm always cutting different sizes of circles. And in this one alone, already I have 4 different sizes of circles, and punches only come in usually very standard sizes. And so I probably couldn't get enough punches to do um, all the different circles I would want. All right, so that's a good size. I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. And this one's small enough, I'll just go ahead and put it right here. Like I said, I end up with glue all over myself, and I do smear glue on the collages. I don't think there's really any way around that. And some people use different types of glue. I like the glue stick. It's just something that I've always used. Um, I know some people use Yes paste, which is a real thick paste that you can use a paintbrush and paint it on. Some people use like a real liquid glue, like the Elmer's glue or the PVA glue. I just find that even with this cardstock, it's pretty thick, but still, if you have a real liquidy glue, then your paper can get really wrinkled. With the glue stick, the paper will buckle. It will actually be curved. And a lot of my collages that I've done um, have a slight curve into them, just because a glue stick, it does have some water in it, and so the paper does get wet, and then as it dries, it shrinks. So anyway, so now I have 3. I like working with 3s. I want to think about where I want to put these. I often think about the rule of thirds, which means that if I divide my paper up into thirds horizontally and vertically, that if I put my center of interest, so in this case it's going to be the big circle, it's going to be the one that people want to look at the most. It's big, it has good contrast against the gray. Up here would be a perfect spot for that. So I have that kind of rule of thirds. There's an intersection there. And then with 3s, I do a lot with 3s because it's just more dynamic. Okay? It's more dynamic than 2s, than even numbers. So odd numbers more dynamic than even numbers, and 3 is kind of like one of the uh, smallest stable numbers. So triangles are a very stable shape. It's why we see a lot of triangles in bridges and things. Actually much more stable than a square or a rectangle. And then we'll just glue this down. And sometimes I like to just turn it over, give it a good rub on the back, make sure everything is stuck, and there we go. All right, I hope you appreciated this look at how I do my daily collages. Of course, I do my collages differently every day. I try to explore different images, different shapes, different colors. So if you want to kind of see what I've been up to for the last 700 and some days, you can check out my Instagram or my Facebook pages. I post them there every day. Of course, if you like this video and you want to see more like this, make sure that you like it and subscribe to it. And of course, share it with folks that you think might enjoy it as well. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this look at how I do my collages, and I hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you next time. So happy creating.